Hey everyone, welcome back to those checking out another Transformers unboxing and review video, and hello to those who are here for the first time. Hope everyone's going okay for whenever they're watching this. For this video we will be going through an unboxing and review of Studio Series Deluxe Class Ratchet, and this is the 82nd release of the line. And this particular version of Ratchet is from the Transformers Bumblebee live-action movie, and this particular figure was released back in apparently the early part of 2022. So playing the catch-up game and going back to some of the live-action Bumblebee figures that I hadn't yet done unboxing and videos for before things became Beast Wars, Rise of the Beasts and all that jazz. But even though Rise of the Beast is still a few months away, in fact it might even be less now, Transformers Bumblebee was still a precursor to that movie, so still somewhat in theme. Now I have actually done Studio Series Ironhide in the past, so I'll include a card to his video, which in saying that may mean this video may, emphasis on may, could be shorter. We'll see. Anyway, front of the box for Ratchet, with a nice CGI image of Ratchet here in his robot mode. We do get to see robot mode Ratchet there as well, and at the time we still had plastic windows. And rumor has it we might get plastic windows again. Not sure about Transformers, but I think Hasbro are taking steps to bring them back. Interesting. Side of the box, Studio Series 82, headshot of Ratchet, Deluxe class, and then just a usual image of Ratchet there with a bit more of a full body shot. Back of the box, 22-step conversion between robot mode and vehicle mode. Like Ironhide, it will be pretty much the same mold with some minor retooling, head being a good example. Now, Ratchet did show up in the initial Cybertron scene back in the live-action movie, so it's no real surprise that the backdrop is Cybertron Falls. And the blurb on this is, as the Decepticons launch their final assault, Ratchet and the Autobots find themselves outnumbered and flee Cybertron in the escape pods. A very good scene. Very nostalgic scene. It's actually been a while since I've watched the movie. Might have to try and catch up on that, especially before Rise of the Beasts. Might be the first movie I see in the cinema in a few months yet. Back of the box. Now that we've had a look at the box, time to open up the box and have a look at all the inclusions. And with everything out of the box, what do we have? We have one accessory, one Ratchet, one manual, basically everything as standard. And we have the Scenic base also off camera as well. So, as we usually do, just have a quick look at Ratchet in his Scenic base. Now Ratchet, will you momentarily stand? Yes, you will. So, Scenic base of Cybertron Falls with one Ratchet standing in the foreground. Very nice. And the good thing about Ratchet's color is he actually does stick out a little bit from the very dark background as well. But granted, this being a video, it's not the best image, so I'll try and get a few nicer pictures for Instagram and potentially the community post. Ratchet, we'll come back to you in a second. Your manual. So just quick steps on weapon storage and attachment. Otherwise, what was this? 22 steps to convert. Won't spend too much time on this because this will be a rinse and repeat from the manual that Ironhide basically had. Which will be very interesting because I did struggle a little bit with transforming Ironhide. More so for the legs than the transformation. Here's hoping I don't have that again. So that is the manual, as always included. Now before we get too far, Ratchet, there you are. Your very significantly sized primary weapon. So before we get too carried away, you will have a nice little tab there to store that, if I can remember which orientation it goes into. There we go. So that is the weapon storage on the back, which does look very nice. Sounds very cool that you can store that there. And then, of course, with any old weapon, you also be able to hold it. And there we go, holding your weapon with no difficulty whatsoever. And that can be held in both hands, which is very cool. And there we have it. Too bad you don't have too much more portability with it, but oh well. I was trying to see if I could actually have it something like that, but it's not the best effect, but there you go. So that was your primary weapon. We will have a quick look at this again in the vehicle mode. Now, Ratchet. So there's a nice shot of Ratchet from the front, one of your sides, the back, top down, bottom up, and a nice close-up on some of that detailing. Let's see if we can actually get your head detailing to come through. And just your upper torso. So, very nice as always. Now I have noticed, similar to Ironhide, so it's quite possibly the mold itself, the legs do feel a little bit loose, which may or may not be an issue later down the track. I have also noticed a little bit of discoloration on one of the upper thighs and a little bit of the arms here. It's not too bad, given that it has been in the box the whole time, but now that it's pretty much opened to pretty much direct air now, I guess time will tell if that discoloration gets any worse. I think you can see it there, but at the same time it actually doesn't look too bad because it just looks like it's a bit of an ivory color. Which, when you've done real grade Gundams, you tend not to be too phased by it, but that's me. Anyway, what do we have here? Ratchet primary color should probably be white. We do have some of this nice red throughout, two-tone red actually. A little bit of grey and darker grey. We have the nice translucent blue here, the Autobot symbol in a silver, I dare say, and graphite / black throughout. So very nice color palette. The red definitely does help break up the white, not to mention so does that silver on the face. And overall I would say, even though Ratchet is primarily white, the additional splashes of color does help. And yes, I do have a splash of color of some weird red here that has come from somewhere that oh well, weird things happen. Good thing about Ratchet, basically no kibbling here whatsoever. And I will mention now, he does have that nice little see-through visor thing at the back there, so if you can ever get the light right, you can probably light up those eyes of his. Now, we've already done this test already, but yes, you can definitely stand your own 2 feet. Now, as for articulation, head will do a nice 360, can do a bit of tilting up and tilting down, so I think Ratchet will definitely be able to pull off some good dynamic poses and directions with his head. In terms of the arms, can pretty much do a solid 360 there at the joint, which is good. Arm does go all the way out to the side and then back down. Now the arm also does have a 360 here as well at the upper arm, which is pretty standard these days. The arm will also be able to go back and go forward for both a normal 90-degree bend and a anti-90-degree bend, because yes, arms do need to go backwards. In terms of the lower arm, there's no real articulation there. The wrist does move here and there, but that's mainly just to facilitate transformation. So that is the arm. In terms of the waist, we do have a nice 360 there, which is very cool. As for the legs, full splits, very nice. Without doing what I did in the previous video and completely detaching the legs. We will get the 360 up here as well at the actual waist itself, which is cool. All the way to the back, all the way to the front. This is the good thing that I've liked about the Ratchet and Ironhide designs, that from a leg perspective it's actually nice to have a good degree of front and rear motion. Side motion we already know about. Now as for the upper leg here, we do have a nice 360 there as well. So I will admit, for a figure of this type, there's articulation galore. As for the knee, so we do get a standard knee bend there as well. The knee will not go forward though, so you can't do a bit of a forward knee, just pretty much a standard knee as usual. No real rotation there in the bottom part of the leg. I know moving these a little bit because for some reason they don't really tab in nicely. And as for the foot, what do we have? Well, the foot can definitely move up and down, some very minor side to side, so it's not too bad. The up and down is nice, especially if you're doing, I guess, steps. And yeah, that little side to side, it is very minor, but can probably help with some more dynamic poses. So that brings us to the end of the robot mode of Ratchet. Like Ironhide, pretty solid. Ratchet is still himself very solid because pretty much all he is fundamentally just a very minor head retooling and re-deco. But yes, I've quite enjoyed the robot mode for the mold. It's definitely very solid. I definitely do like it. So now that we've done the robot side, time to do the vehicle side, and here's hoping this time around I'm not going to be trying to transform him for the next half an hour. And with Ratchet now in his vehicle mode. So the transformation actually wasn't too bad. I actually didn't struggle with the legs as much as the first time I tried when I was doing Ironhide. But I did have a little bit of some struggles just with some of the tabbing on the shoulders into the main body. So here we have Ratchet in his vehicle mode. I have attached his primary weapon onto his top side, and to be honest, for Cybertronian vehicles, I actually don't mind their main weapons being on them. At the same time, he's also not an animal, so it seems a little bit more intuitive. So here we have front from the side, from the back, from the top down, and the bottom, and a nice little side angle as well. So still seeing majority of that white come through and a little bit of the red accents here and there. We do get a bit more colour from the grey on the wheels as well. The blue on the chest is still there, as is this dark red / burgundy and some of the graphite grilling as well. I did notice there was a little bit more discoloration on some of the white as well, so it's basically becoming a combination of pure white with ivory white, but it isn't too bad. Once again, I'm not as fussed with some of the discoloration that white sometimes does, but in saying that, I will have a limit, and subject to what happens over time, I may hit it sooner rather than later. So now that we've had a look at Ratchet with his main weapon on, that's with the weapon off, so that's pretty much what his top side will look like. Definitely not too bad. Yeah, because I still have it here. And yes, I do know that it's probably not the best type of image, really, in the sense of trying to use the backdrop with his vehicle mode, so I always get the feeling these backdrops are more meant for their robot mode and not so much their vehicle mode. But in saying that, some of the larger ones actually might not be so bad, so the deluxe size backdrop might, not deluxe size, sorry, Voyager size backdrop could look slightly better, but still, it's a rough idea of what Ratchet in his vehicle mode would look like on the backdrop. But yes, having something a bit bigger would be really cool, especially for the vehicle modes. In terms of articulation, well, being a type of vehicle, a four-wheeled vehicle, the vehicle itself doesn't have any type of articulation, and the articulation that it does is pretty much just each of these wheels. So they will move independently, and Ratchet can do forward and back rolling. It does feel a little bit encumbered in the sense that I probably haven't tucked something in properly. Something most likely being this particular arm. In fact, this side actually does look slightly off center, which could explain why I had a little bit of grievance with some of the transformation. Now, I don't remember if I mentioned it last time. The transformation does have a nice degree of tabbing, so there's some tabbing here for the front of the chest window to attach to the legs. There is some tabbing here for the shoulder pylons to attach into, I believe those are the top of the legs, and then likewise these side panels do have some tabbing as well, and there's some tabbing as well for the forearms into the legs. So if you can get everything to line up nicely, and I feel I'm slightly off center, especially if I look at this panel here as well, the tabbing does help keep it nice and solid, and I think that's been a bit of a staple through most of the Cybertronian Ultimate, which is very nice. Articulation we've talked about, colors we've talked about, definitely not too bad. I mean, overall I do like the Cybertronian look for all their vehicles. I'm glad that someone took time to actually flesh out the designs. It's actually very nice to have these, given that even in G1, Cybertronian modes were very few and far between. It's only been in the last few years where we've started getting some. Which, in saying that, I do have a pre-order for Buzzworthy Jazz, so definitely we'll be having a look at him in the future. So that's pretty much a look at the vehicle mode. Colors, little articulation, pretty much a view of everything from different angles, and the weapon attachment. So that is the vehicle mode. In fact, we will attach this back on just for the sake of bring back the manual. So in terms of final thoughts, starting with robot mode, articulation is very nice. Granted, the caveat is I haven't done any dynamic posing, so I could see some inhibition with some of that posing. Time will tell. The design is great as always. I think the Bumblebee designs have always been great to look at. The figure, especially in robot mode, no real kibbling, which is nice. It's always a blessing to have kibbleless figures. Design is good, the colors are nice. I think from a possible weakness / criticism perspective, white being white, and even though it's been in the box, probably has started to discolor. I'm not too worried. I do know some people do feel a bit more frustrated when the white discolors. Generally it shouldn't, but it'll come down to personal preference on to how much you find it acceptable before it becomes very unacceptable. Like Ironhide, I do remember the waist feels a little bit loose. Now, Ratchet throughout this video didn't go toppling over when he was standing upright, so it'll be interesting to see what happens when I do the video shorts and the dynamic posing, if some of that weakness does come through. Now, because Ratchet has it and Ironhide has it, probably it's safe to assume it's the mold and not the individual figure. That, or I've been really unlucky and got two of the figures that have had weaker joints. Yes, they can be touched up and made stronger, but just be wary of that. It could be a thing. But other than that, I'm quite happy with Ratchet's robot mode. Here's a vehicle mode, once again. I quite like the aesthetic and the design. It's very nice, it's very solid, and the weapon attachment is definitely not outlandish. The tabbing is good for the transformation. The transformation itself is also not too bad either. And now that I've had a bit more experience with it, it's definitely not as terrible as it was the very first time. It definitely has some very nice complexity to it without being too difficult, especially once you figure it all out. And to be honest, it does feel a bit intuitive over time and with practice. So that was nice. Won't mention colors because the colors are still the same. Discoloration is still the same. So weaknesses of the vehicle mode, other than the color side of things, I guess maybe the tabbing, if I really wanted to try and find something. Probably unlike some other Transformers, I think Ratchet, and probably the mold itself, not so much Ratchet specifically, but the mold I think has a bit of a dependency just to make sure that everything is really lined up nice and tight and or just in the correct orientation. Looking at some of the limbs that I know have the 360 rotation, maybe if you don't put them back into pretty much a dead straight alignment, you may just off-center some of the tabs and things like that. So, and I think that's what I've unintentionally done for Ratchet. But that's okay. That's probably just something that I've done. I don't think it's necessarily an issue with the figure itself. I would still recommend, for those who haven't grabbed Ratchet or any of the studio series from the Transformers Bumblebee live-action movie, definitely pick them up. It's been a very nice blessing to actually have the Cybertronian version of all these figures, because it is such a treat to actually see those modes. Been always blessed with their typical Generation 1 modes and variations of, but something about the Cybertronian modes is always very nice to look at, and I think it's just because it's a fresh aesthetic that we're not necessarily bombarded with, that just gives it a very fresh take. Plus the Transformers Bumblebee movie was a nice, I won't say a rehash, because it wasn't, but it was a nice change in pace and direction for design elements and things like that. And I think that is probably in itself brought some nice positivity and general desire to really appreciate the aesthetic. So yes, definitely overall, I would say, yeah, I would totally recommend Ratchet, as well as Ironhide, because they share the same mold. And I know domestically I have still seen Ratchet on the shelves, so it's only been a year since he's been released, so he hasn't completely disappeared, but I suspect if you were to wait another 6 months, it will start to become a little bit harder to find him. And then as the time goes on, it'll just become progressively harder and harder. So if you haven't picked him up, I'd definitely say I think you'd be in for a nice treat. And definitely be good to be able to flesh out the entire Autobot side of the Bumblebee Cybertronian line. Which, with that being said, is basically what I'm going to try and do in the upcoming weeks. Thank you very much for watching this unboxing and review video. Hopefully it's been still informative. Definitely have a look back at the Ironhide video. Even I'm tempted to do it just to see how I handled that video back then to how I've done Ratchet now. Just to see if there's been any improvements, or if I've just changed things and things have just decided to flow a lot better. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. All of this does help support the channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram account. Link to that is in the description below. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and for those who've been around for a little bit, there will be some additional content on Instagram, obviously, as well as the community tab here on YouTube, and some extra shorts for Ratchet. And hopefully over time I'll do some more shorts as well once the collection is complete. And hopefully the penultimate Autobot Cybertronian team all in the one video, which will be fun to do. It will be very time consuming to do, so I think that'll be done once I've finished all the relevant unboxings. With that all being said, stay safe and take care, and I will catch you all hopefully in next week's unboxing and review video, especially if you're here for the Transformers content. I am trying to get some extra content up and running. Time has not been great, I keep saying that, but it actually has not been great for the last few weeks. But do keep an eye out on that. I will try to also make it a point to be a bit more mindful of the preview posts in the community tab. Otherwise, if I don't see you on the Transformers content, hopefully see you around on other videos on the channel. See ya.